All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to Valley of the Mist Block of the Month. I'm Adriane Ritter.
And I'm Shelley McNeely.
And we're here with our April 2021 Block of the Month.
Right.
This month, more than ever, I would suggest you get the instructions off the Valley of the Mist Quilt Guild website. This block, okay, we know we promised you this year that this was improv blocks all this year. But this one isn't. It's a simplified block. So we were looking at blocks, and I kept looking at the Storm at Sea block and thinking, oh, I wish there was something we could do with the Storm at Sea. Which, for you, if you're a beginner quilter, may not have ever made this block. If you're an experienced quilter, it makes a beautiful pattern when you make a whole quilt with it, because it makes these faux curves.
Right.
And apparently, Shelley has looked it up, that there is a way to do the colorations and the setting, and it actually looks like waves and a storm at sea. Well, so we couldn't figure out how to improv it, but we did figure out how to simplify it a little bit and do it without any templates or special rulers. And we're calling this a squall at sea. It's not quite a storm, just a squall.
Right.
Because we did simplify it a bit. So, that said, it's not a simple block.
No.
It's not hard to make.
No.
But it's a little bit complicated. Further complicated by the fact that we are letting you put the colors where you want them. So we can't tell you fabric 1's your focus fabric and fabric 2 is this. Okay, so Shelley, do your job. Tell them what fabrics they need for this block. And while Shelley is telling you what we're calling the fabric number, I'm going to point to where it's used in my block, okay?
Okay, so first of all, let's just talk about the fabrics that we're using this year, which are you pick, but there's still going to be a focus fabric, and this is the focus fabric in this one. And then we have a coordinating fabric, because the green goes with this, and then 2 neutrals, and I have a black and a white. It could be a brown.
I have a gray and a white, or could be anything.
A light and a dark, best. Okay, so that's what you need for the quilts this year. Okay, now fabric number 1, which is the first one on the outside, 4 3 3/4 inch squares, 4 2.5 by 5 inch rectangles, and 2 4 1/4 inch squares. Then fabric number 2, which was the next one in, is 4 2 inch squares, 4 3.5 by 7 inch rectangles. Then fabric number 3, which is the black one on mine, is 1 4 1/4 inch square, 4 2.5 by 5 inch rectangles. Then fabric number 4, which is the center, got 1 3.5 inch square.
So we have put them in different places. In this block I did one layout, and in the version I'm going to sew along with today, I'm kind of reversing those pieces. Shelley's
going to do the
completely
totally
different.
Yeah, it'll be different.
Okay, so the first thing, you can leave your block up there, Shelley. So the first step we're going to have you do is very simple, and that's making what we call these flip corner squares, which are these 4 corners of the block. And to do that, you're going to take your fabric 2 pieces, which are, sorry, I'm looking down here, little 2 inch squares, right? Is it 2?
Yes.
Okay. And on the back side of them, you can't really see it, but diagonally, you're going to draw a line. And either draw it this way, or remember when you're sewing it, you're gonna put this against this one of the corners of your fabric 1, and you're gonna sew across here, and you want to sew slightly in from the diagonal, like just the width of a piece of thread in, or just slightly in, to make it so when you fold it, it covers the corner.
Yeah, because you lose a little when you have your
So here's one where I've sewn it on there, slightly in. I have this. after I sew those 4 on there, I'm going to cut off and leave a 1/4 inch right here, and then I'm going to press it out. And when you Shelley recommends pressing it in towards the major part of the block, which kind of forces your corner out and really filling that space. So you'll end up with 4 of these, and we're going to do that first. And then we'll be back. All right, so we have our 4 corner points. I just have them up there to show you. That's where they're going to kind of go. Okay, so we're going to go a little bit out of order on this next step, just because we're kind of picking off the easy parts. Not that any of it is especially hard,
Right.
But the next part we have to do is what's called the square in a square in a square.
Yep.
Right? Isn't it technically?
Square and a square and a square. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
All right.
center.
So for this, you need your square, which was that fabric 4 that was 3.5 inch square.
Right.
And then of your fabric 1,
No,
your fabric
3.
3. What size was this one? It was a 4 1/4 inch square.
Right.
You needed one of those. And the first thing you're going to do is take that and cut it on both diagonals. Now, I remember last month I told you that we choose the size of the fabric so you have protected bias edges. And you're going to say, whoa, Adriane, you're not doing that this time. But we are, because you're going to do your square in a square in a square. So they will be protected.
Right.
And I mean, because there is a dimension, we just didn't give it to you, that you could do to do this in 2 and make 2 1 diagonal cuts. But we just made it the bigger one.
Right.
So you're going to take and you're going to sew the hypotenuses of these triangles you get from here around the corner, around each side of this center.
Usually opposite sides, right? Or how do you do it around?
Oh, I do the 2 opposites,
Yeah.
and I do the other 2 opposites. Yeah. And the way to do it easily is if you take your center square and press it into 4. So you have a press mark on to mark your center lines. And you take these, and you don't have to do this, but I'm just suggesting it makes it easier. And you press these gently so as not to stretch any bias edges. And you can actually press it before you even cut it if you wanted to, because you just want this, you want to get this center line. And then when you go to put these edges on, you're going to just make sure that when you line this up, as you line it up here, if that point is on a center mark, then you're on the center of the block, and then you know you've placed it in the right spot.
You end up with a square when you're done then.
Yeah, surprise. Okay, so you're going to do that. And when you're done sewing those 4 on, you're going to trim off these little points that are going to stick out on the sides over here. You need to trim them after you sew the opposites on, and then the other 2, it's not as important.
Right.
Okay, so you're going to end up with a square, another square that's a little bigger. And then you're going to need your fabric 1. Fabric 1. And that we asked for you to have 2 pieces that are how big?
4 1/4 inch.
4 1/4 inch square. So that's this one right here. And these ones we want to have the outsides. Oh, huh. Yeah, we want to have the outsides to be a stable edge. So we've made them the size that you just make. You're just going to put them down, and you're going to make a diagonal cut. 1 diagonal cut. You're going to stack. You can do them separately or together. Just stack them. You're just going to cut on the diagonal carefully. They are slightly oversized, and then this will go on this edge that your new edge that you have.
Right.
Okay. So we're going to do those 2 steps, and when you come back, you will have your center square and a square and a square.
Right. Do we want to talk about what size it needs to be when you're done, or we?
Oh yeah, you could. Yeah.
That needs to be a 6.5 inch square. You could square it up. Probably have to square it up. Should be close to that, but that's what you need for the center.
And keep in mind that on this one also, you're gonna when you lay this against this, you should be able to see a middle point of your square, and that's what your triangle should be hitting, you know, it should almost be, there'll actually be like you should be able to see where the middle is.
Right.
Okay, if you're not sure, then after you make this one, fold it again and get your centers so you have a point, something for this tip to point at so you know you have them lined up correctly. And then you'll get a square.
Right.
All right. Okay, so now you guys, I wanted to say one thing. We've come back and we have our square and a square and a square. And I did forget to mention, so the outer size we told you to square it up, but this inner size of the inner square, if you want to, you can, before you add those final corners on, you can square that up to
4 3/4.
4 3/4. I'm going to measure it just to make sure.
Okay. I didn't do it on mine, so it's not required.
Yeah. Oh, I guess it'd help if I have it the right way. Yeah, it should measure 4 3/4.
Yeah.
So, but you know, if it's a little wonky,
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah.
You just need to be able to get that outside measurement.
Depends on how oversized you did things. So.
Right. Right. So as long as you can get your 6.5 inch center, then you're good. Okay. So I'm going to set that aside. All right. So now we're on to the next step, and we saved this for last because, well, it's not hard. It was a trickier portion of the block.
More. It's harder to describe, maybe.
Right. Okay, so what you have left that you haven't done anything with, we made our little flippy corners, we made the center, so now we have these, what we're calling these diamond pieces, okay? So how to do this, you have a bunch of these pieces that are 2.5 by 5 inch rectangles, and they should be from Fabrics 1 and Fabric 3.
Yeah.
And you have 8 of each color, and so we need you to, and you can cut these in pairs, which please cut them in pairs. Don't do them one at a time, because you have to get these two sides are a different cut, so you have to cut them. We want you to stack them. Like say I have 2 grays, I want them right sides together, and I'm going to cut them together, and that way I will get 2 different cuts. If you don't stack them either right sides, we'll say right sides together, and cut them, you could potentially end up getting 4 of the same piece,
right.
And you'd have to cut more fabric. Okay, so we want you to take those, stack them right sides together.
You could do 4 or 2 at a time.
Yeah. To be honest, I did 8 at a time, but right now I only have 4 sitting here, so I'm going to do 4. And all you need to do is make a cut, and to be honest, it doesn't have to be super exact. They're a little bit oversized, but you're going to cut one of the diagonals. So, oops. Okay, so now I have one of each shape. Well, I have 2 of each shape of each color. So the other thing you need to do, so we have those. I'm going to set those up there for a minute. The other piece you have left is a rectangle that is 3.5 by 7. Okay, so use your big rectangle. We want you to press that twice into a smaller rectangle, and then make sure, because I did this wrong and I cut the wrong way. Make sure you have the floppy edges out, okay? The floppy corners, the 4 loose corners out, and you're going to make a diagonal cut so those loose corners come off. And we want you, and the pieces sized this way so that you can just go diagonal to diagonal, make that cut, and your diamond is the right size. So you've got it now, the diagonal piece in the center. And when you sew these, we want you, every time you start to sew on, because you're going to sew these little triangles onto here, we want you to start from the pointy part of the triangle. And a lot of times you're recommended not to do that, but we need you to do it this time because that's how pieces line up.
Right. And make sure you sew, when she gets this piece on.
Now I'm going to take this down a second. Okay. So when you have this triangle, you're going to see that the pieces they make a square if you lay them on there correctly.
Now, right, now I must admit, I did this, or at least laid it that way. Make sure you put the long side that you're sewing on, and not the one that seems almost as long.
Right, yeah, you want that hypotenuse against the diamond. And I actually took my diamond piece, laid it down, and put the pieces where I wanted them, and looked at it each time and made sure, because it's very easy to turn one of these triangles.
Yes.
And it won't, and your block will not come out
Right.
the right shape. Trust me, we have unsewn a lot of these.
Yeah, and if it doesn't look right, then you know you sewed something wrong. You probably cut it all right, you just didn't sew it right.
Correct. So we recommend that you, it doesn't matter, but we want you to do two opposites of this first, okay? Do them two at a time. So I'm going to take those two down, and I'm going to say I'm going to sew these two. And so the way you line it up, it's pretty easy. You just take this triangle piece and measuring along the edge of the triangle piece, I want 1/4 of an inch right here, measured here, not measured here or here, but right there, 1/4 inch sticking out, okay? And then sew that on to that edge. Then I always pressed mine out to the triangle I just added.
Right.
Do the next piece. You know, I did both of them, pressed up those two out, and then you do have to, after you press it, you're gonna have a little bit hanging off here, and at the other end. And for this, after you do the first two sides, you have to trim those off. Okay, so trim that just even with that side of that's left.
Right.
And then sew on the other two. And so when you do that, after you do that, you're going to end up with a diamond-shaped piece like this, okay? And these ones, to give yourself a little extra, to make sure you have plenty of block there for when you square it up at the end, we want you to trim these three sides and leave this, whatever your outer edge is, you know, your colors are different, leave that one untrimmed. So trim these three, and these pieces need to be, what, 6.5 by 3.5? I'm
right.
pretty sure.
Right, that's the final size.
That's the final size, and so to do that and not trim that last edge, Shelley figured out a little magic that if you take a ruler and this center point of the diamond, if you lay your rulers 3.25 inch mark under that, and then at this part of the diamond, that's at the 3.75 inch mark.
1.75.
I'm sorry, 1.75 inch mark. And then you can trim those two edges and then turn it and do that last thing. I mean, I doubt you have a 3/4 inch.
It helps you get your diamond in the center.
Right, and so you have, I mean, generally, we don't care a lot about whether your points are preserved, but this actually is shaped, we have it shaped the right size, so you should be able to save, you should have 1/4 inch outside of the diamond, and it'll be good.
Right.
Okay, so we want you to make all of those four, I lost my block, those four pieces.
Oh, sorry.
And trim them down on three sides. And
Right.
then we'll be right back. All right, so we have all of our little sub blocks
Right.
sewn together. Shelley is only revealing a smidgen of hers.
Well, yeah, now.
Okay, so now this next step, we're just going to have you, I mean, you can see how the block lays out. It's a normal sew together. You're going to sew these 3 rows into strips. Press those how?
Okay, let me show you on the back of the one I've made. So press.
So in a top row or bottom row.
It's a little hard to see. You press. I'll just tell you. On these rows, press towards the outer corners.
So press away from this center piece.
And then in the center, when you get to the center, We opened up the seams and, did it that
So
way.
that one's kind of up to you. Either open up the seams because you have a lot of points coming together right here.
Right.
Or if you want to nest them, then you're going to have to press them in towards the center.
Yeah,
okay, so that does make it a little bit more lumpy. But do it how it seems to work for you.
Right.
Try to match up your corners here. After you sew these three, you're going to sew the strips together to make the whole block. Try to match these corners and sew from there. And then we will be back with our finished block.
All right, so we have our finished block.
Right.
Now
We've already squared them, so
we
we're
already
good.
squared. Yeah. I mean, we struggled with this block a lot. We've sewn it and resewn it, trying to simplify this block, and it's not perfect. I mean, there's a reason why the Storm at Sea block is complicated.
Yes.
Because to make all these points match and that illusion of the circle to all line up, this block isn't perfect. They're not going to line up exactly like if you're doing the Storm at Sea.
But you know what? Storms are not perfect either.
Yeah, that's true. And we're not looking for perfection. That's kind of our motto.
I know. We're improving.
Yeah. So like you can see mine, I'm going to lose a few little points, and I don't care. So if you really care, get over it.
I know. It should be pretty good, though. I should be dang close. So
it should, and it still gives you that circular illusion,
exactly,
which we were going for.
Yeah.
So, all right. So have fun with the block. Don't get frustrated about your points and your measurements.
Right.
There's enough to make a 12.5-inch block.
Yes.
And don't worry about it. And we will see you here next month.